Episode 5 of the Pregame Podcast, numero 5. I'm Kevin Towle. I got the same crew sitting next to me and on the phone. The legends. I got, to my right, Spencer Pearlman. Others refer to him as the Archduke. To my left, Abdul Koroma. His alter ego is also known as Dullo. And of course, joining us via mobile telephone is the mayor, Josh Tambor. Guys, what's cooking?
Hello.
Playing another format thing, but then good night. So, how you doing?
Doing great. I mean, I'm a little depressed. Football's over. But the good news for our viewers, our listeners rather, is that there's so much going on in the offseason that we're never really going to stop talking about football on the show. I mean, there's always going to be something to talk about. We're going to recap a Super Bowl, which just was crazy. I mean, it was entertaining. It was great. I love the fact that it wasn't like last year. It wasn't a freaking, I mean, last year was awful. It was a terrible game. We're going to talk about signing day for you college football fans out there. Up here in the Northeast, people don't really care about it that much, but if you're a college football fan, you really should. Although there's also arguments that you really don't have to put too much effort into it, which we will discuss. We'll talk some NBA, final games leading up to the All-Star break, and of course we'll talk about college hoops. It's early February. Teams that are on the bubble have got to start winning because a lot of teams are really, really flirting with the NIT right now. We got a great show coming up ahead. Stay tuned with us.
If I had my way, I'd change my hair. Or to give a kid's meal the way I like it, with no pickles. Sure. Yeah.
I'm telling you guys, that was a brutal Super Bowl in the sense that the Patriots are the kings of the hill. And I'm not going to lie, despite the awesomeness of Gronkowski basically shotgunning a beer in the parade and, chugging fireball shots, I mean, I don't particularly like seeing them as Super Bowl champs, but hey, it's the reality situation. Everyone's been talking about this the entire week, so I know you're probably sick and tired of hearing it, but we got to talk about it. What in the world was Pete Carroll thinking? Abdul, why do you not run the ball?
I mean, he said that he didn't like the formation that they were in, that he saw New England go in the goal line, and it wasn't their personnel that they liked. But I just really think this harked me back to 2006 when he was at USC and when he had Reggie Bush off the field on that 4th and 1. I just think that this was a straight overthink. I don't know why you don't go Lynch 3 times.
You got beast mode.
He goes 4.5 yards on the play right before. It's not like they weren't picking up yards. I just think that this was a complete overthink. A coach, overthinking the situation at that time, screwing up the call.
Oh, but on the 5 times before this, Marshawn Lynch had the ball on the 1 yard line. They scored once. On the previous 108 throws from the 1 yard line into the end zone, none of them have been intercepted. Out of 109 throughout the entire season, this was the only one. So he was playing the percentages, I guess.
But in that scenario, Tambor, I mean, as Herm Edwards said best, you play to win the game. I mean, Spence, you bring up a great point. But Tambor, I mean, it's common sense. You're second down, run the ball. You're on the 1 yard line. Run it in.
Hello, you play to win the game. I absolutely agree with you. To Dullo's point, as an extension of that, Seattle also had a timeout. So if you didn't like the formation, go call a timeout, go get your act straightened out, and then you can go figure out how to throw it. How to throw it, or if you want to run it for that matter. But from a passing perspective, I can agree with Spencer's point that he just brought up. But that's a very dangerous play to call, even on a passing situation. If you're going to throw the ball and you have 4 downs, by the way, you got 4 cracks, on first or second down, whatever it was, throw it to the back pylon where either your guy's going to catch it or it's souvenir for somebody in the stands. I mean, just really atrocious play calling and even worse game management. I would venture to say it's almost as bad as Andy Reid's game management when the Patriots.
Oh, it's worse. It's worse. The worst of all time.
Like the worst thing about it's even this. It's like you're targeting a pick using Browner, who's a 6'4", 229-pound corner. And you're expecting a 6 foot, like a 5'11" receiver to pick him out.
Yeah, what are you doing? You're throwing a gun at him.
Ridiculous personnel call. Personnel call.
I mean, the one thing I will say is, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, this is one of the best Super Bowls I've seen in a while. fun fact, every 3 out of 4 TVs in the United States was watching that game. So definitely, despite the inefficiencies, for lack of a better term, of the NFL front office, the popularity of the sport obviously is still clearly there.
Best in the world.
I must say, though, if they run the ball, or regardless, whatever happens, let's say the Seahawks score and they end up winning, I think we would be knocking Bill Belichick for not calling a timeout there. I mean, no one's talking about that. Why, Abdul, why does he not run the ball? I mean, why does he not call a timeout there?
I honestly
I don't think you'd be knocking him. I don't think you'd be knocking him with the answer, because here's the thing. The Patriots had just gone, they'd marched down the field, they had taken the lead, and I don't know that you're knocking for calling timeout. It was, the defense didn't make the play. The defense didn't stand tall after coming back in a 10-point lead. Look, actually, the more depressing thing about this is that forever the history of this game is going to be marred by Malcolm Butler's interception, and people are going to completely overlook Jermaine Kearse's terrific, absolutely terrific catch that he made falling down in the back, because it's going to be lost in the history of the idiocy, the complete and abhorrent idiocy that is Darrell Bell's play calling, Pete Carroll's coaching, and Russell Wilson's decision making.
Abdul, one thing that people are talking about a lot this week that I wanted to ask you is, technically the Seahawks were not fully healthy. I mean, if you think of the big guys, Sherman came out and said he wasn't healthy. I believe Cam Chancellor said he wasn't healthy. Torn MCL. I mean,
it's ridiculous.
If they're 100%, do they win that game?
No, because honestly, at the end of the day, they didn't really attack the Legion of Boom as such. They attacked those linebackers. Marine had 11 catches. I mean, people underappreciate that. The Patriots' game plan for Brady throwing 50 attempts on 50 pass attempts, he really tore apart the underbelly of that Seattle secondary, which is probably their weakest part. And, at the end of the day, I think that New England actually came out with a perfect game plan. And at Brady in that last fourth quarter, well. 13 of 15 is magnificent, completely magnificent on those underneath throws.
I think that's a good point. And another thing I think that people aren't really appreciating is Jeremy Lane had that great interception for the Seahawks in the first quarter, and then he goes out for the rest of the game. I think people no one's talking about that.
It was gruesome.
That was crucial, and he couldn't play the rest of the game.
That was a Paul George injury.
It really, it was
disgusting.
I can't watch the replay. Spence, apparently Julian Edelman, quote unquote, passed his concussion test. I mean, that's suspect to say the least. Do you think he was wobbly at best? Was that a little classic Patriots, like, we'll tamper with that a little bit? You have any thoughts on that?
The guy could barely stand up after both times. So it was the one in the end zone, and then wasn't there one like at the 20 or something?
Yeah,
like that? Like two of them. The guy
walking a straight line.
Yeah, he was. I don't know. I think if they actually did a legit concussion test, they would have found out that he had one, and he wouldn't have been in the game. So I think this is something that should be investigated, but probably won't be investigated because they're the Patriots.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned that. We were talking about Deflategate, as was the rest of the media, for that's all we talked about leading up to the Super Bowl. And all of a sudden, it's like, Deflategate? What the heck is Deflategate? It's unbelievable. At the end of the day, winning is all that matters. Abdul, Brady's legacy. So when you think about, this is now his 4th Super Bowl. It's been there 6 times, defeated twice by the New York Giants. Oh, thank you. He is 4 for 6. Joe Montana, 4 for 4. But when you think of the best quarterbacks of all time, I think of Brady, Montana, Elway, Bradshaw, maybe even Unitas. But, Unitas played a different era. He's really not in the same conversation. Put Johnny Unitas in an NFL game today, I think he gets slaughtered every down, in my opinion. And that's no disrespect to you old school NFL fans who may be listening. It's just the reality of the game. It's different. Is Brady, in your opinion, Abdul, the best of all time?
See, I think that this rings are all talk is a bit pushing it. I think you have to look at somebody's overall body of work, which, if you want to go pro Brady, the 1 year in which he has actual weapons with Moss, Welker, that Patriots offense, he goes for 50 touchdowns and goes completely off, breaks records. So
he killed it that year.
I definitely would give him, I think he's top 3 overall, but I think that the fact that, maybe those first 2 Super Bowls you can't exactly give that it was more on him. He had a vicious Patriots defense.
It's true.
He was more of a game manager in his earlier years, especially those 2 early Super Bowls, versus Montana, who all 4 years, he should have been a Super Bowl MVP for all 4.
Those games weren't even close. With the exception of Cincinnati, every other game is blowout.
So I really think, Don Brady's definitely a beater. Let's say if he gets another 5th, then you've got to really push.
You know what?
He's 5'7".
What is he, 37?
37 years old.
But you know what?
I think
he looks good out. He's got another
3-4
2.
years.
Yeah, exactly.
3-4 years, I'd say.
Tambor, I just want to ask you. I thought it was a nice gesture of Brady to give Malcolm Butler his MVP truck. I thought that was pretty cool. Well, what a great story with Malcolm Butler, right? I mean, the guy is working at Popeyes, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. Goes to West Alabama. Not Roll Tide, Alabama. West Alabama. And is now the hero of the Super Bowl. I want to hear your thoughts on this story. Is this one of the better sports stories you've heard in a while?
I love sports for stories like this. I also think Tom Brady gave him the car so that he can claim it as a tax-deductible gift. Tom Brady is actually a financially smart guy.
Maybe that was the case after all.
No, I do think this is also because Tom Brady probably has no space in his garage, and Giselle is probably asking him to downsize before they retire. No, look, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. He's a young guy, and obviously with Bill Belichick, you love him or hate him, he does have a knack for talent development and for finding guys in his system and in his methodology, for lack of a better word, that fit. So obviously it's great for the kid. I'm sure it's beyond cloud nine for him, and it's a terrific story, and we wish him the best of luck.
Spence, you had brought this up. I thought it was a great point. After the game, Marshawn Lynch actually did talk to the media, and he could have easily have ripped the coaching staff.
Bruce Irvin did.
Mm-hmm. That's true. But he gave that team first comment, and like you mentioned, it's going completely unnoticed. You know what? In my eyes, I was surprised, but were you surprised by that?
I was not surprised. He said, I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's actually one of the more sincere players in the NFL. I truly think that that he understood why they called it. I think he might not agree with it, but I think it just kind of says what kind of person he is. It also kind of shows that the media really only searches for stories. And all they do is try to rile people up instead of actually being sincere. And I feel like it's kind of flying under the radar, and that's not fair for Marshawn.
And Tambor, you also brought this up too. Larry Foote calling out Marshawn Lynch as being a poor role model. I mean, come on. That is a little unfair, don't you?
Well, yeah, considering that the NFL is not exactly chock full of role models. In a similar story, we saw Troy Goyan this week for the Green Bay Packers get arrested with felony amounts of marijuana, which was 347 grams. And this is actor Joseph Randall was also just recently accused of abusing his partner. So if Larry Foote really wants to serve as an emissary for the NFL, that's terrific. But I really don't think he has any business calling out Marshawn Lynch and claiming that Marshawn Lynch is this almost pseudo-anarchist that they're saying that he is. We also neglected to mention that Josh Gordon was suspended for drugs and Johnny Manziel into rehab. So if for Larry Foote's emissary campaign for NFL role models, I think he's got some work to do.
We'll talk about current NFL trends going in the offseason coming up next. We'll also talk the best commercials and the worst commercials. We'll be back.
It's time you were warned. Once you try Kellogg's Rice Krispies Treat Cereal, one taste is never enough, because it's everything you love about the taste of Kellogg's Rice Krispies Treats in an incredibly crispy cereal and part of this complete breakfast.
We now return to Roundhouse and Snick, only on Nick.
We were talking about the halftime show with Katy Perry. Real quick, Spence, you love that left shark, man. You love it.
The left shark was the MVP. That's it.
Tambor, thoughts on the Katy Perry show?
I didn't know Missy Elliott was actually the halftime act. It's great to see her back to her.
That was awesome. Out of nowhere. Missy Elliott making the appearance. I kind of had I read somewhere about Lenny Kravitz showing up, but
yeah, he grinded with her.
But I did not expect to see Missy Elliott. Abdul, I mean, better or worse than Janet Jackson?
Well, Janet Jackson, showed a little bit of body.
But we were in seventh grade for that.
Yeah, I know.
You know
I was
what I mean?
watching.
Like when you're in seventh grade, you see Janet Jackson. It's like, whoa! That was interesting to say the least. All right, some things to talk about briefly before we move on to our college football signing day segment. Like I mentioned earlier, yes, it's depressing. Football season is over. However, there's so much going on in the offseason that we will pretty much we still have a lot to talk about on a weekly basis, I would say. Like Tambor mentioned, Josh Gordon smoking the blunt again. Johnny Manziel going to rehab. Oh, it's alcohol.
Yeah,
Oh.
Gordon's actually alcohol, yeah.
Abdul, is Johnny Manziel going to be a new, focused man ready to lead the franchise after this?
See, I don't even think that it's even that from a leadership point of view. I don't even think talent-wise, from an NFL
Doesn't have
perspective.
the talent. I agree.
I don't think he's really you can't really rely on him as a pro-style pocket passer, which is what you got to do to win these days.
And he's short. Yeah, he can run, but every defensive end
Even
can
that,
catch
the
up to
running
him.
wise, I don't even think he was that much of a running threat the last season that we actually showed. It's like short yardage, yeah, but not like to Russell Wilson's level, which is like picking up 20 yards, really breaking down a defense through your legs. I don't really think Manziel's like that, but that whole Browns organization going on to Josh Gordon from now. I mean,
disaster.
A lot of people like Josh Gordon's letter that they said it showed maturity and stuff. I thought it showed the opposite. Is this is a guy that still doesn't get that he has control problems here. He
has so much. He has all talent in the world to be a top 3 receiver.
Zero maturity. Zero.
Unbelievable. It's a great point. Unbelievable. Josh Gordon suspended again. We'll hear his fate, I'm assuming, pretty soon. Manziel goes to rehab. We'll see if that does anything. Good for him, though, for getting that help. That's for sure. Tambor, Dolphins putting living room seating in their stadium. It's going to cost $75,000 for a 4-pack of seats. Shouldn't they be focused on putting a product on the field instead of this?
Yeah, but this is a new thing in NFL stadiums. This morning our counterparts on Mike and Mike were talking about they took some fan feedback about what fans want to see in stadiums. And look, the stadium is becoming more of an at-home experience. There have been discussions for some teams trying to put bowling alleys or Dave and Buster's type scenarios, or even play areas for kids. Although how funny would that be? Dropping your kid off at daycare and then going sitting there and getting boozed up watching a football game. No disrespect to your dad, we are a family program, but think of the value. So I think it's an interesting experiment for the Dolphins. I honestly hope it pans out. I think for the Dolphins side, they're much more concerned about the $400 million upgrade that's going into their stadium, but it should be an interesting experiment, I think.
Warren Sapp. Spence, any thoughts on Warren Sapp? He's in Phoenix. He's at the Super Bowl having the time of his life. At that point, he is employed by the NFL Network. He solicits a prostitute and now has been fired by the NFL Network. I mean, obviously it's the right move, but you're a future lawyer. I mean, this guy's been in bankruptcy. Now he's soliciting prostitutes. What the heck are you going to tell your client here? Like, grow up?
Well, he's no longer their client, so he doesn't tell him. They don't tell him anything. I mean, he's a free agent right now.
Is the bankruptcy court giving him per diem to go spend money on prostitutes? Is that allowed? You even know how to do that?
No.
I don't know what it is about sportscasters prostitutes the last 2 weeks because you had Greg Anthony.
Yeah. He's axed too.
Yeah.
It's for God's sake, just calm your hormones.
Greg Anthony's married to a doctor too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you know what's bad? Being a University of Miami graduate like Abdul and Josh Spence anchored down, he was in this commercial for the school. Warren Sapp, he throws up to you. God, come on. Maybe I'm being a little too, old school here, but that looks so bad. Now that he's soliciting prostitutes, he's in the freaking university commercial. Come on, man. I mean, that's bad. Quickly here before we move on, Hall of Fame class announced 8 inductees, including the late Junior Seau. Obviously, they're blaming the concussion problems on his unfortunate decision to take his life. But Junior Seau, I think, was the right choice. Abdul, any thoughts on Junior Seau?
I mean, he's a great linebacker, absolute monster in that middle. Even towards the end of his career when he played with the Patriots, and showed a really consistent player. USC, ex-USC as well. It was sad what he did, especially because they said he was really, really troubled in his post-football life. And I think it was a great addition to the class. I think that's for him to be a headliner. I think that was the right thing.
I agree with you, and I think obviously it's unfortunate he's not here today, but needless to say, one heck of a football player. Stay with us, college football fans especially. We're going to talk college football signing day. We'll review the University of Miami recruits. We'll go over Vanderbilt. They lost some recruits to Dartmouth, like we mentioned last week. Sorry, Spence.
It's okay. Thank you, Kevin.
we'll talk about who won. I mean, ESPN has an opinion, but we can talk about that briefly. And then, are we paying too much attention to this to begin with? Stay with us. Well, this past Wednesday, February 4th, many 17 and 18-year-old young men were deciding their futures on national TV, which in an event that I think is a little too overhyped, but being a huge college football fan, you got to pay attention to it. You can't just ignore signing day. So we're going to talk about it. Who won? We'll talk about the University of Miami. SEC, by the way, SEC is brutal. We'll talk about SEC recruiting tactics in a little bit. Spence Bra showed us all a phenomenal article that everybody has to read. It was published a few months ago, but got to read it.
We'll put it on the Facebook page.
That's a good idea. But Abdul, do me a favor. Can you list off the top 10 recruits and where they went?
All right, and this is per Rivals. So we got Byron Cowart, who's number 1 overall, going to Auburn, Florida.
He almost made it to Florida and made up his mind.
That's Muschamp. Florida paid Muschamp $6 million to still have their recruits.
Yeah, hilarious.
So you go Josh Rosen, UCLA, the top quarterback. Iman Marshall, top defensive back, USC. Martez Ivey, Florida. Derwin James, best safety, Florida State. Florida State and Florida still locking down the state of Florida. Khalil McKenzie, the best defensive tackle and nose tackle to Tennessee, who are back.
Tennessee?
They're back. UT is back.
Spence hates UT.
Yep. Sorry, buddy.
It's okay.
Trent Thompson, Georgia. Damian Harris, Alabama. Calvin Ridley, Alabama, which is another Miami loss.
Right. Great.
Terry Goodwin, Georgia. And out of the other top 25, other ones I liked, Tavares McCadden, Florida State. Kevin Tolliver, LSU. C.C. Jefferson, who we have some drama because his dad is blocking the LOI going to Florida. So
it's your son. Let the son pick. Come on, man.
So those are the main recruits coming out.
So Abdul, you pay a lot of attention to this. You think USC just and the even UCLA, the two LA schools in the Pac-12. You think they were one of the clear winners?
I think that this USC class, considering that they're completely off sanctions now and can sign a full class of 25, their defensive commitments this year are old SEC defense based. It is a massive front. You have Rakeem Christmas. You have Iman Marshall, who shuts down that secondary Patrick Peterson clone, who I don't want to go too far, but he really is 6'1". That would be
he is
unreal. A monster. And
he's one of the best corners in the league.
Really is. And then you have other like Noah Jefferson out of Las Vegas. You have Austin Messina. It's a really great class, and they beat their number 1 ranked class. They beat Alabama, the only school to do that.
That is unreal. It's when I'm on Wednesday when I'm on ESPN.com briefly because I'm at work, can't really spend too much time, but. It seemed like it was either USC, UCLA, FSU, or Bama. It's like, and I didn't see at a school with 5 national championships in the heart of arguably the best recruiting hotbed in the country, the University of Miami. They got a
little bit shut out.
Got shut out. First 2 that come to mind: Jordan Scarlett going to UF. That's because of his girlfriend. He is, going to UF because his girlfriend's there. All right. I see where he's coming from. But can you really blame him? I'm a Canes fan. Can you blame him for not wanting to go to Miami right now? And then Dexter Williams goes to Notre Dame.
Didn't see that one coming.
Didn't see that coming at all. They did have some notable recruits. Tambor, you particularly like one. You want to talk about Baumoehl or Milo?
Baumoehl coming all the way actually from the Middle East, coming from Israel, played at Chaminade College Prep, a huge big-time prep school in California, also home of many Canes fans know Brad Kaya. Bar actually protected Mr. Kaya's blind side, played the left tackle spot. So very excited for him to come in. The other guy I'm really excited about personally is Lawrence Kaiser, a 6'5", 4-star receiver. I'm a huge fan of the big bodies out there. I think giving Kaya as many weapons as possible, that's obviously important for him. Miami did definitely shore up its defensive backfield, taking 2 very, very solid defensive backs from the Miami area in Robert Knowles, and they also took another kid, Jaquan Johnson, who actually enrolls early in January. So a lot of work in the defensive backfield and the offensive line for Miami, but I think Baumoehl has a chance to be a stud for them.
Tambor, according to Rivals, only one out of the top 25 best players, high school players in Florida, committed to the University of Miami. What would you say in terms of the past, 4, 5, even 10 years? Is this one of the worst classes we've seen in a long time?
Abdul is going to disagree with me because him and I spoke about this briefly last week. I've stopped buying into the whole star recruiting thing, the star value, star assessment system. Look, I've said this about great players in our past shows. If you're a great player, you will show up and play. I think in the past, so on paper, does this look bad? Yeah, it looks bad on paper. Have we seen other what look like elite recruiting classes on paper not pan out? Absolutely. And that's a function of coaching, discipline, heart, a lot of things. So I think the thing that bothered me most about this National Signing Day was Al Golden, who many people are considering to be on the hot seat. Al Golden compared himself to Brad Pitt in Moneyball, which I think
ridiculous.
Brad Pitt may take a little bit of
Come on, dude.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Coach Golden, Brad's a little bit thinner, and his wife is a very good-looking lady in Auntie Jolie. So I think Brad may take a little bit of offense to that, but Al really flying his swagger a little far out there.
You know what upset me the most about and this is where I got disagrees, Josh, is I know you could say that stars aren't everything, but you can say that recruiting through the stars, especially Rivals, has gone very accurate. I don't think that this class has a lot of talent just on a football tape perspective. And the fact that really upset me was out of the top 100 kids, the Florida kids, the top 20 Florida kids, Miami was nowhere near most of these kids.
If they got all those kids, they win national titles. Jeremy Shockey said it best. If they've got all the South Florida kids, they win it every year.
And the worst thing about it is this: it's that I say you have out of the class, Cage is asleep, I'd say, but and you have Baumoehl as well. But certain kids have no being in this class. It's certain kids like James King, who's a 6'1", 200-pound linebacker. Okay, has room to grow, but we run a 3-4 now. So what do you have? What are we going to do with a 200, 210-pound linebacker? Or even when you talk about the star rankings, it's like our 08 class, talent-wise, was insane.
They're number one,
and it was worthy of number one. It was just severely undercoached and severely a severe lack of motivation. But talent-wise, how many of those kids have made the NFL? 70% of those kids have made the NFL in some form, be it a practice squad or be it like the back end of a member somewhere.
Well, that's in that class. But when you look at any given high school class, right, of all the 4 or 5 star guys, I hate to be negative here, but at the end of the day, half those guys be busts. You know what I mean? A good portion of those guys are gonna say, you know what, that was the best day of my life when I was on national TV and I committed to college, because a lot of them aren't gonna make it to the NFL.
I've honestly got to say that I think that's a Miami thing. Because if you look at Alabama, who's dominated recruiting for the past 5 years, was produced pretty much a dynasty. All the SEC teams have dominated.
No, I mean that is definitely a good point.
Top level teams.
I don't want fans to automatically write their teams out just because of signing date. There is obviously a huge coaching aspect. Spence, we were talking about the SEC. First off, any Vanderbilt guys that, you guys unfortunately had a few rough years. Anybody that comes to mind that, you're competing with brutal teams to get recruits.
According to ESPN, we have the lowest ranked recruiting class actually in the entire SEC. We are the only private school in the SEC. We will forever be the worst school in the SEC for football. But we did get a couple good players. There's a pocket passer, who's a 4-star recruit, who's an ESPN 300 guy. We got a couple. I think we got 2 6'4" wide receivers, including a 6'5", 240 tight end. We got another inside linebacker who I think is a 4-star recruit, or outside linebacker. We got a 4-star cornerback. And then we actually got Eddie George's son, who's, even though he's only a 2-star recruit, people are expecting him to have the same impact as being underrated the same way Deion Sanders Jr. was at SMU.
That would be amazing if he was his dad. Can you imagine that?
Sick, yeah.
That would be unreal. And it's funny because they're competing, like you mentioned, against these big state schools in this hotbed. And I want to mention that article we were reading. Want to go into that real quick and just explain what the base of that is?
Basically, just behind the scenes, there are guys providing SEC like recruits and players with money, with cars. It's like everything that you expect a booster to do, they're doing.
It's more secret than the FBI. I mean, these guys are like,
Yeah.
these guys just keep it hush, hush, and there's nothing the NCAA can do about it.
Right.
It's unreal.
Yeah, but like people who think that it's not happening, like I'm sure it's happening in the NCAA basketball, also with Calipari and everybody.
Of course.
Like it's prevalent. It's gonna continue. There's legitimately no way to stop it unless if you start paying them. But then the players are just gonna want more money, and then they'll continue to get more money on the side, and it's like a cyclical thing that really just has no end.
I mean, the fact that they were even able to get that interview was just unreal. I forget. It was SI Insider. It was published back in April. Obviously a few months old, but highly recommend to our listeners to read this because it goes in depth as to what truly happens behind the scenes in terms of they're targeting a recruit. All right, not the coach. Obviously, the coach is recruiting them, but the coach knows these guys exist, but doesn't really, quote unquote, know what's going on. So there's nothing the NCAA can do to really stop it. These guys are getting, thousands of dollars in cash at a time to pay these 17, 18-year-old kids. Unbelievable. Real quick, before we move on to our NBA segment, 538.com did a really interesting study on signing day, and we were, based on what we were arguing before about the stars and whatnot, and the best classes don't always make for the best production in college. It's basically the thesis. And schools like Wisconsin and Georgia Tech, who don't always get those top 5-star guys, end up they have the most production than some of the other big-time schools, a la J.J. Watt, a 2-star. We'll be back with some NBA.
If kids like me took over the world, there wouldn't be any school. Better yet, we'll keep school, but it won't really be like school. Our favorite classes will be gym, recess, and marine biology, where we'll learn how to save the whales. As long as we're changing the world, let's change the name to McWorld, because McDonald's will be the official food. We'll take all-day field trips to Mickey D's, which Randy Kretschmer will never go on, because he'll be in permanent detention. He picked on me in social studies. And, let's get a cool gym teacher for once.
You bad for a game of horse?
Hey, that could happen.
We're back and running. I hypothetically brought up the idea of maybe the Knicks going on a little run, given that the East is so bad and if Melo plays. But my co-hosts have knocked some sense and reality into the situation, and they're right. It's not going to happen. We keep talking about Hassan Whiteside, so forgive us, but it really is something else. This guy just keeps putting up ridiculous numbers. I mean, it's not even fair. Spence, is this like Linsanity 2.0?
Nope, because Jeremy Lin was a player that could only fit in one system, and that system is a high octane pick and roll where he's basically pounding the ball for long periods of the shot clock. Hassan Whiteside is a very high level complementary big who I actually think could fit in any system really, except for one that would require him to space the floor. He could fit, he'd be a perfect fit, actually, better fit in Dallas instead of Tyson Chandler, I think. He could fit, obviously, with the Knicks. He's very malleable, I guess. It's like a chameleon. But I see this lasting through next year. Would not surprise me one bit if he ends up averaging over the next couple seasons between 16, 18, 19 points a game, 12 to 14 rebounds, 3 blocks a game. I think he's here to stay.
His numbers now are, obviously it's only been a few weeks, but they're very David Robinson-esque. If you look at the numbers, it's fascinating.
But David Robinson was a face-up big. Hassan Whiteside's a back.
Right, no, I'm just saying in terms of just overall production, it's like, wow, the last guy to do this, it's... When he had an interview with Dan Le Batard in Miami, he was saying, my NBA comparisons are guys like David Robinson. He was like, really? But if you look at the stats, granted it's only been a few weeks, but
he's Dwight Howard with a touch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, good for Miami to get that going. Thunder Inc. Nick Collison to extension. Abdul, does that mean KD's staying? And KD to the Knicks. Are we crazy?
We're crazy.
Are we crazy?
It's 2 teams in play for that. It's Durant to staying in OKC, which I'm going to give it about 75%. DC is the other 25%. But
There's no chance.
Just not
I'm not gonna get my hopes up again. I refuse to let 2010 happen again.
We've been through exactly.
Yes.
We've been through this. We go through this every 4 years. It's a cycle. There's some superstar goes on the market. We're gonna get him. He wants to play, or da-da-da-da-da. We get shut out of that free agency. Can we stop? Let's just build a nice complementary team in the coming up free agency. We have a number 1 draft pick overall. We already have the number 1 star. Build around him. Look at the Hawks this year. Look at the Hawks this year, which is a team that plays team basketball, plays throughout, one of the best teams in the whole league. That's the way in which I think we should go. We're not getting Durant, boys.
Okay, I would like.
We're not getting him.
All right, no, we're not getting him. But Q-Tip, yes, the rapper Q-Tip predicted the following: LeBron going back to Cleveland, said Melo is staying. He also said LeBron's going to be one of the owners of the Cavs in 6 to 8 years, which is possible. He's also saying that Kevin Durant's ties to Derek Fisher could bring him to New York. So he's been 2 for 2 with Melo and Durant. With Melo and LeBron. So really, he's batting 1,000 right now. It's very possible he's right again.
It's
a pipe dream, though.
Q-Tip is only good for when I have water in my ears. I need to fucking get. Oh, I just cursed on there. And I need to get water out of my ears. Anyway.
Or we need a little old school rap.
Yeah, I mean, Q-Tip could be right. Q-Tip could be right. We'll see. Brooke Lopez on the trading block.
Broke Lopez,
maybe. Jose Calderon has been even rumored to be on the block as well.
He's definitely out by the draft by the latest.
Tambor, do you like the idea of Calderon being shipped?
Yeah, please, let him go. There was also word today that Maury Stoudemire is taking time during the All-Star break to think about a buyout from the Knicks. Regarding our earlier pick, Phil Jackson should honestly jump out other than my boy Langston Galloway, and I guess they can keep Carmelo Anthony because they've signed him to a long-term deal. I'm happy to move him. I think the Knicks definitely need some other pieces to the point of our other posts, which are complementary and can do one thing, which is actually manage an offense, which Jose Calderon doesn't really appear to be able to do.
He has nobody on his team, though. If you have Calderon as like a 4th option who you really just needs to spot up, shoot, and not turn the ball over, I think he'd be fine. But his contract's terrible. So I'd much rather trade him. Hope Langston Galloway can maybe be a spot starter, and if not, go out for Dragic, who people will say you don't need a real all-star point guard for the triangle. But if you look at the league, every team in the playoffs has an all-star level point guard basically.
What about Brooke Lopez, Spence? Brooke Lopez, you have to call him.
Yes.
If you're a contender,
nope.
do you go after him? Where would he make sense right now? Nowhere.
No, they were.
You hate him.
I do not.
You hate him.
All right, so he's a black hole on offense. He does not move his feet in defense, and he rebounds like a guard. He scores at a very high level, but again, he's a black hole. He
doesn't play defense. You're right. Plays no defense, but you can't deny his offensive skills on the basket. But needless to say, Spencer, I think you've now just been elected the Broke Lopez president, the president of the Broke Lopez fan club. I'm sorry, not fan club, hate club rather. I want to talk real quick before we go into our favorite commissioner, Adam Silver, what he's done lately. Cavs, we were just ripping David Blatt, Abdul, and myself and Abdul, and I think at the time for good reason, and Tambor too.
Winning cures all.
I mean, what's going on? Are Kyrie and LeBron all of a sudden they sing Kumbaya and what's going on there?
It's one guy really. It's Mozgov. It's really
Once a Nick, always a Nick. Once a Nick, always a Nick.
It really is.
What happened with that? I mean, come on.
Rim protection. I mean, that's all it really giving you at this point, especially with LeBron James on the court at the same time.
They're averaging 93 points per 100 possessions, giving up on defense when those two are paired together. To put that into perspective, the Sixers as a team are averaging 90. So when those two are on the court, they're holding elite teams offensively to basically, they're like the Sixers. That wasn't English.
I mean, I'm happy to see them doing well. It's about damn time. Mozgov, obviously a huge part of that. LeBron said that he needs Kevin Love to be more assertive, and I agree. I also thought it was interesting that LeBron would take a back seat on the bench. Did you read that?
Yeah.
He was saying he would sit on the bench. So I got to give him credit for having a team-first mentality there. Other guys that are looking pretty good right now, Tambor, the Pelicans. Certain guys on this podcast thought you were crazy a few weeks ago for having them as your 8th seed, but you're looking pretty good right now.
I should not have reneged on my pick. Pelicans look terrific. They were one game back to the Suns as of a while back. And, of course, Anthony Davis is doing what Anthony Davis does, and he's being a beast. But they're also getting help from the first, and they started to actually play a little bit of defense. So they may have to hop back on the Pelicans bandwagon and predict them to possibly outplay the Suns down the stretch, although I love the Suns backcourt. So very hard to hit up
the Suns are like 7 points away total from being like a top 4 or 5 seed in the West. They lost a game in a banked buzzer beater 3-pointer from Blake Griffin, another banked buzzer beater 3-pointer from Chris Middleton. They lost, I think, like 3 other games by like 2 points or less, and they're still in 8th place. Like they're basically a 5th seed playing as an 8th seed. Plus the Pelicans also just lost to the Thunder. That is a huge loss for them.
Huge loss.
If it comes down to the last game of the season, they're going to be killing themselves for that.
I also like to point out... Oh, sorry, Tambor, go ahead.
But notice how the Thunder were so hot a couple weeks ago, and now they've started to go back into this. We're sort of teetering at 500 mode. Although to be fair, Russell Westbrook has really showed that he can handle a team by himself in the event that Kevin Durant leaves. He has really been phenomenal this season, and I've never been a big Russell Westbrook fan, but he's really impressed me. Seth, I 100% agree with you, and you know the game better than I do, but it's very hard to ignore a team in the West which has a couple guys in their front court who are really outstanding players in the front court. Nothing against the Suns for an excellent basketball game. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely a good point. One thing I want to point out about the Suns, I want to thank Casey Epstein for pointing this out. Jeff Hornacek's daughter, Jeff Hornacek, the head coach of the Suns, his daughter is drop dead smoking. Do yourselves a favor and Google Jeff Hornacek daughter because, wow. Anyway, Blazers only winning 3 of their last 11. Abdul, panic mode?
All right, hold on, I got to type in the daughter. No,
come on. Focus.
Jesus. All right, so I know the Blazers, I mean, I really think, at the end of the day, every team goes through their slumps. Like, good teams go through their slumps, too. But, who knows if LaMarcus Aldridge's thump, that's the main thing that's going to catch up to him, like, as he puts more and more, tread on it. And I just think they've got to stay healthy pretty much, and it's like Washington. Washington are slumping right now. They've had 5 losses in a row, too. This is every team goes through that.
I think the All-Star break comes at a very good time for a lot of teams, including the Blazers, like you said. Real quick, before we move on to some college hoops and talk about the abysmal Hurricanes, Tambor, a 2-0 final score in an Alabama high school basketball game. Quick thoughts.
It was a 2-0 score. It's the best and also the saddest thing I've ever seen. One of the coaches of the winning team was actually asked about his comment given that the first match came 15 seconds into the game about if he was stalling. He said he had by no means any intentions of looking like he was set to stall. So just a little bit of humor there for our basketball lovers in Alabama.
Interesting. I don't know if any of those guys are going to get a chance to be recruited, but we're going to talk about some college hoops coming up next.
There's only one way to make the coolest games even cooler. Game Genie. Yeah! To start at any level, Game Genie. To play your way. Game Genie! Well, get this. Game Genie's got the secret codes for Mortal Kombat. And if you think Mortal Kombat is awesome now, wait till you play with Game Genie. Because if you don't, you'll never know how far you can go.
Now Game Genies cost less, each sold separately for most video game systems. Free Mortal Kombat Game Genie codes at participating retailers. Supplies are limited through year end.
Well, as a University of Miami alum and extreme supporter of the men's basketball team, that's an understatement given what I did for 4 years. Heartbreaking losses to Florida State and Louisville. I don't know what to tell you guys. I mean, they beat Duke on the road in Cameron. They almost beat a Notre Dame team on the road. They take Virginia to double overtime. I mean, this team can play, but they're losing these heartbreaking games, and I hate to say it, but their tourney hopes are in trouble. I think they will get there. I think they will get in because I know Coach L, I know the coaching staff, I know these players. They will figure out a way. I'm confident about that, but the panic button has been pushed. That's for damn sure. Upcoming schedule, they play at home against Clemson on ESPNU at 6:30 this Sunday. Fun fact, the promotion for that game is desserts and dunks. Like, whoever is in charge of marketing for the basketball team at the University of Miami needs to be fired immediately. Desserts and dunks? Are you kidding me? I like dessert. I really do. But not for freaking promotion, okay? It's Shane Larkin bobblehead day that night. Just use that as your promotion, not desserts and dunks. Anyway, I digress. Excuse my rant. We then go to Wake Forest, then to Boston College, play Virginia Tech at home, and then the big game that they really need to win at Louisville. So the next 4 games, relatively smooth, for lack of a better term. I think those are definitely games they can win. They need to go 4-0, and then they need to pull out a W in Kentucky against the Louisville Cardinals. They got to find a way to win at Louisville. When Angel and Sheldon aren't taking their shots, that's what happens. But I digress. The Canes, they should be okay. Let's talk about the University of Kentucky. They're still finding ways to win tough games. Spence, you're an SEC guy.
I am.
Their next couple games, at Florida, at LSU, South Carolina, at Tennessee, and then home against Auburn. Can they go undefeated?
Yes, I think they're going to go undefeated. And if they don't, it's 100% on Calipari for not sticking with Ulis Booker in the backcourt. I said this many times before. I'll continue to say this. The Harrison twins are not good. They're at best Jarrett Jack players, but they still have a lot of work to do in their shot selection. I still don't think they're good teammates. But Florida, I think they're going to win. LSU could be a good game. They have Jordan Mickey.
That could be a really good game. That's true.
He's very good. LSU also has an incredible incoming recruiting class for next year.
Yes,
basketball.
they got that international
Simmons,
kid, right?
Ben
Yeah,
Simmons.
he's a
Be
beast.
Top 5 pick.
Beast.
But I mean, the rest of their games, they should be fine. South Carolina, I think they actually gave them a hard time the first time they played, but I trust Calipari's actually, going to light a fire underneath them. Tennessee, I don't think is going to be a big deal. Auburn, I don't think is going to be a big deal. So I think they'll
definitely go 5-0 in the next 5 games. I think that's safe.
The only time I think they could actually lose is the NCAA title game, but it really just depends who gets there.
Right, no, that's definitely true. Tambor, you had always talked about VCU. You had mentioned last week that was a big game against Richmond. They lost with that 13-game winning streak on the line. They lost. And Briante Weber, their senior leader, is gone. He's out for the year, likely the end of his college career. Do you think VCU, always a Cinderella, do you think they don't have a shot at the tournament this? I mean, they could make the tournament, but should we expect them to make a run?
I think this is going to be a testament to how good of a coach Shaka Smart is. Look, when you lose a guy like Briante Weber, who in some cases many people were predicting to wind up being the all-time leader in steals, that they sparked.
He was doing great.
On your defense that you can't make up. So I haven't watched them closely enough this year. I was watching a little bit during that nice streak that they had going. So, I have faith in Shaka. I think he's going to find a way to figure out how to get them to win games. And, they're always tough in the tournament under him.
No, that's definitely a good point. One team I wanted to sort of highlight real quick, granted they did lose to Providence recently, but I think Georgetown, quietly making some noise in the Big East. They're currently 24th in the nation. Not hearing much about them like you usually do for a Georgetown team. They play Villanova this weekend. I think Nova's overrated personally. That should be a good game to see if Georgetown can really hang with the quote-unquote big dudes. Abdul, I want to ask you this. Georgetown's biggest rival, or at least before they switched to the conferences, Syracuse, with the postseason ban. It goes back to the days of Fab Mello from 2012 back to even 2007.
Yeah.
The first guy that comes to mind is Eric Devendorf. he's the biggest moron of all time.
No, Fat Mel gives you a run.
I mean, they're both morons.
Himself a concussion walking into a door.
I mean, so that's true.
I mean, there were even rumors he can speak English coming on the camp.
Okay, so there's clearly some academic fraud, given that, when you have guys like Devendorf and Fat Mello. But should these current Syracuse players feel the heat from that?
I mean, Miami went through the same thing sort of with the football program. So, I mean...
It's a joke.
It's kind of like you have to... I think it's ridiculous them taking that ban, especially like punishing the current kids, because it's really the administration should take the hit. Like, it really should be a fine in some way, the administration. But Syracuse knows that they take the ban now, it will save them any sort of punishment coming in later years.
But here's the thing. And you're absolutely right. It's basically Miami 2.0 in a sense, much lesser scale in terms of frustrations and the overall reputation, because we were rumored to have the death penalty with our football program. Obviously, that's not good. But this is another example of how awful an organization the NCAA is. Just get your stuff together and investigate it right away. Why should you have these schools self-impose penalties on themselves when you can just figure it out, do the investigation, and either give a penalty or not? Don't make them go through this. Mark Emmert, the president of the NCAA, is a tyrant, and he needs to go. He's a tyrant. He's terrible. Unbelievable. Want to talk quickly, though, on bracketology. Tambor, I know you love the local teams. I don't think the Johnnies are getting in this year, dude. The Hall may not even get in either.
Well, both teams certainly need some wins. Seton Hall, unfortunately, they have a couple of key games down the stretch, including playing Georgetown and Providence again.
That would be big for them to win those two games.
Some must-win games for the Seton Hall, and unfortunately some very bad losses, including to Marquette recently. So Seton Hall really cannot afford to lose. St. John's really,
they're not getting in. They're not getting in. They lost to Butler, too.
That would have been a resume win for them. So I'm hoping that Seton Hall, gets the win. It looks better of late after a tough stretch, but they really, really need to finish out their, I don't even know, I guess they're still Big East, their former, whatever it is. They still need to finish out that Big East stretch strong. And, if St. John's gets a couple wins and maybe a win or two in the tournament, I wouldn't be surprised to see them sneak in at 12. They could be dangerous at the 12, though. I will tell you that.
I mean, you're absolutely right about that in terms of them being dangerous. They need more. They need to start winning in right away. One thing I noticed is the SEC, besides Kentucky, is not very strong. However, there are teams that can make the tournament, Spence. I mean, you had mentioned LSU, Arkansas, Georgia. Do you think teams like that make for a tough first-round matchup?
I think Arkansas might because of Bobby Portis. He's really the only guy. Well, Bobby Portis and then Jordan Mickey on LSU. I think in order to make like a legit NCAA Cinderella team, you need to have one star player. Usually they're on the perimeter like Steph Curry was, and he was with Davidson, Jimmer when he was with BYU. But Bobby Portis has a really good inside-outside game. Jordan Mickey's just like a beast. He's ball of energy, I guess. But aside from those two teams, I really don't think anybody else. Vanderbilt next year, I think, will be towards the top of the SEC, but that's it. They
have the talent to be, but is Kevin Stallings going to get his act together? No.
Nope.
That's an easy answer. Canes slated as a 10 seed. Tambor, you had mentioned that they're, according to Lenardi, they could play Stanford in the first round. Hypothetically, that would be a very tough game. Stanford is very underrated, in my opinion. They play in a very top-heavy Pac-12. The teams in the middle and the bottom are pretty awful. But in terms of, Arizona, Utah, Stanford is a pretty good team. So that would be tough for the Canes. I still think the Canes get in, like I mentioned, but they need to start winning in right away. Some notable games this weekend before we move on to our final segment, our classic personality segment. Louisville Cardinals, number 9th ranked Cardinals, travel to the University of Virginia. The three ranked Virginia Cavaliers. That's a 7 p.m. tip on Saturday on ESPN. Another intriguing game in the ACC a little bit earlier in the day on Saturday, 1 p.m. on CBS. The Fighting Irish, Notre Dame, 10th ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish take on the Duke Blue Devils at Cameron Indoor. That should make for some very entertaining television. I had mentioned Georgetown and Villanova. That's 2 p.m. on Fox Sports 1, the Big East channel there. And we always keep talking about the Big 12. They're probably the best conference top to bottom. The 19th ranked Baylor Bears travel to Morgantown to take on the Mountaineers of West Virginia. That is at noon on Saturday on ESPNU. We couldn't finish our show without our classic personality statement. And, quite frankly, I think we have some pretty entertaining people to discuss. Stay with us.
Twizzlers. A sea of mouth-watering Twizzlers. Chewy. Tastes so fruity. I love it when it twizzles. Twizzlers make smiles happy.
We couldn't record the pregame podcast without concluding with our ever-famous personality segment. Spence is going to lead us off. He's going to discuss from the point of view of Chris Paul, who has recently been in the news for a disagreement over a call on the basketball court. Chris, take it away.
All publicity is good publicity. Start off by that. Just getting my name in the news.
You're one of the best point guards in the past 5 years. You're
Yep.
your name in the news.
No, but still, it's always nice, looking at the newspaper, seeing my name everywhere. But, I gotta say, I do think it was very unfair. We were down by, 25 points at the time. I'm trying to rally our team and get the ball to a very fine referee, Lauren Holtkamp, who actually might be a terrible referee, but I'm afraid to say that because I don't want to get fined. We're trying to get everyone back in the game. She won't give me the ball. She says, I ask, why, and BAM! Technical. No, there are many...
Emerald.
What?
Emerald Lagasse over there.
Yeah, there many things that could be said. Is definitely up there with the 4-letter words, the 5-letter words, the 6-letter words. It actually might be a little bit worse because it's shorter and it gets right to the point. So if the producers want to edit out, you go for it. But it was terrible. I'm not a sexist. I'm not a crook. God bless America.
You're just telling it how it is, Chris. Just telling it how it is. Abdul, you want to talk from the perspective of a college football coach that is probably pretty happy this week. So, Steve Sarkisian, take it away.
All right, so I really closed down on signing day. Really shut it down and managed to close in on 6 of the targets I wanted, 5 of them being 5 stars. And
that's unreal.
I really think that I'm going to be back. I'm going to be, USC's, we're going to be that top 4 team next year. I'm going to be my early pick for the actual national championship game next year.
Really?
Because of
you think you guys are that good, huh?
That D-line depth now is monstrous. That front 7, which is the way to do it, especially that old SEC style speed of the D-line. That's the way to go. So I really think that USC's back.
I mean, fight on, Coach. That's all I have to say to you. Just fight on. I'm going to be briefly the Seahawks offensive coordinator, Darrell Bevell, and I'm going to take it away. I'm Darrell Bevell. I influenced Pete Carroll to make one of the worst calls in NFL history from an offensive play calling standpoint. I cost my team the Super Bowl. Yeah, I'm going to go out there and say it. I cost my team Super Bowl. I had the trophy in my hands on the 1-yard line. And I said, you know what, Bill Belichick, take it. I don't want it this year. I don't want it. I won it last year. I don't need another one. And then I had the nerve to insult and blame my wide receiver for not going after the football. I mean, yes, could he have gone to the football more? Maybe. But, man, I really do look like a coward for blaming my wide receiver. Not myself, my wide receiver. It was one of the worst calls. Everybody has been saying that, whether it's on radio, TV. Everyone's saying it was the worst call they've ever seen. But I can't man up. I'm going to blame my receivers instead. Hopefully I can win another one. But I don't even know if I want it anymore. All right. And Mr. Gruden, you have a special athlete that you want to dedicate this personality segment to, so go for it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man, I was getting to think about this. Russell Wilson probably made that play in the Super Bowl because he was thinking about baseball. I mean, baseball's kind of slow. Don't get as many Spider 2 or Spider 3 wide bananas. Have more time to eat the Spider 2 wide banana split. I'll tell you, the kid I'm really looking for is a young girl named Sarah Udick. Girl goes 82 miles an hour for a fastball. If Russell Wilson threw that hard, he might have a Super Bowl ring. But Pete Carroll may not feel as bad as himself. I'll tell you what, the thing I'm really looking forward to is football coming back next year. Gives me more time to probably work on my, level 4 X360 chili alarm that I'm kind of working on for next season. But Sarah Udick, man, you watch out. She'll probably be a football player someday. I'm telling you.
You know, Coach, Sarah Udick will be one of the first women to play collegiate baseball. She is influencing the hashtag Throw Like a Girl campaign, which actually was talked about, if I'm not mistaken, during the Super Bowl. Am I wrong there? It was discussed in some commercials or somewhere. She throws 82 miles an hour, and who knows? I mean, maybe she can, good for her. That's very impressive, and we obviously wish her the best of luck. That ends our segment, although Spencer has something to say.
Just like to say one thing, the Seahawks clutch defeat from the hands of victory.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you. Football's over. Patriots are on top of the world. It sucks, but we'll deal with it together. It's funny. I actually saw I was walking back from the bar I was on a Super Bowl at, and
drinking
there was
alcohol.
Exactly. And there was a couple, and the boyfriend was a Jet fan, and he was legitimately complaining to his girlfriend about being a Jet fan and how he hates seeing the Patriots win, and she was legitimately so fed up about it that they were yelling at each other. The girlfriend couldn't take it anymore that he was complaining about the Jets sucking and the Patriots winning. You had to be there, but just goes to show that the struggle truly is real. We got some decent college hoops this weekend, to say the least. NBA, about 3 or 4 more games left until the All-Star break. It's funny, we live here in New York City. I feel like nobody even knows we're hosting the All-Star game.
I do.
I mean, besides us, I feel like no one's really making a big deal about it. Because I guess the Knicks suck. I mean, that's bottom line. They're playing the Brooklyn Nets in Brooklyn. What's the score in that game?
They're losing by 5.
Down by 5?
Yeah.
Shocker there. What else? We got pitchers and catchers in 2 weeks. Baseball fans, we will continue to make baseball part of the regular show. Mets, very promising going to spring training. Yankees, got a lot of question marks there. Going off our hockey segment last week, Cam Talbot, the goalie for the New York Rangers, having a heck of a game last night, beating the Bruins. Lundqvist, as our hockey analyst Casey Epstein pointed out, Henrik Lundqvist out for the month, so now Talbot really has to play every day and step up, and I feel comfortable with him being there in the back of the net. Well, not really in the back of the net, but you know what I mean.
In front of the net.
In front of the net. I played soccer. I think about back of the net. Anyway, we have a lot to talk about next week. We'll continue to talk NFL, the NCAA tournament landscape. Only about a month away. All-Star Weekend. Who's going to win the dunk contest? Who's going to win the game? I mean, if anyone's watch.
Speaking of All-Stars.
Speaking of All-Stars.
We like to, Joshua Baumoehl, we'd like to give you
He's our executive producer.
A giant thank you. You've done great work this past week, digging up stories and whatnot. And, you did a lot of great stuff, and just thank you. I'm sure, the 4 of us, and then, we got Casey here too. We all really appreciate it. All your hard work and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you.
Always providing entertainment for sure. Dullo, Abdul, Koroma, thank you for joining us.
Got it, boys.
The Archduke,
Bye-bye.
Dudley, and of course the Mayor. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to catch us next week. Enjoy the weekend.